Everybody, it's the Badger, and you are on our digital blockchain and cryptocurrency animated podcast. With me is Mr. James Tiley and Mr. Jonny Fry. Hi, guys.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm awake.
I'm kind of. See, it's you guys have already got some time to process your day. The Badger, you guys poked the stick in the Badger burrow at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I don't know who invented this time zone thing, but it's really kind of stupid.
Yeah, you should all be on London time, really, James.
I mean, you listen, you make a joke, but why not a UTC? We could at least use that.
Yeah, much easier.
Yeah.
Mind you, it's a beautiful sunny day here in London. It's very cold, about -5.
Wow.
Celsius.
Yeah, whatever that means.
Centigrade, whatever.
But Badger, you're on the East Coast, and my colleague James, you're on the West Coast. No, the other way around.
No, strike that, reverse it.
Flip it up, smack it up, rub it down.
On the East Coast. James is apparently one freeway exit away from Florida.
Like I couldn't quite make it.
Yep. One freeway exit away from Florida. Whereas for people who don't know Washington, I live in a suburb of the state of Washington called Puyallup. And that is roughly, depending on what time of day it is, an hour away from the metro of Seattle.
You guys have an interstate. You do have an interstate, right? Is it? You have US
Yes,
101.
I-5.
But I'm saying, do you have an interstate that goes from like pretty much Mexico to Canada, or no?
Yeah, we have the Coast Highway. We took the Coast Highway all the way down to California.
Well, that's the one, isn't it?
Is that a real highway?
PCH 101, isn't it? And then you got the 101 that goes down the middle.
That's what I'm saying. Like we have I-95. I-95 is 4 lanes, 75 miles an hour forever. But the Pacific Coast Highway is not like that, right?
It's a beautiful road.
No, PCH, we go through, I think here it turns into 26 and then it goes 26, but you can take it, the Coast Highway, you can take all the way from basically Linden, which is the top of Washington by Canada, all the way down. We went all the way, we did Coast Highway all the way down to California.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
so. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, guys.
They'll probably charge you Bitcoin for a toll anyway. California.
Let's get started. We have a listener question. Yay! And this comes from a gentleman that I met this weekend at our BTS, Best Is Yet to Come theater event. And he watches our digital podcasts and he loves them. He thinks they're great. And he thinks you two are just hilarious. And he wants to know, he's getting ready to start university, spring quarter. He wants to know what classes he should be looking at taking in order to put himself on the road to a career in blockchain technology or digital currency. Who's going to, James, you're the technical, and Jonny, you're the financial. Who wants to go first?
Go on, James. Tell him how to do it technically. You're good at that.
Yeah, just because it precedes a question as to whether or not he wants to pursue that career financially, right? Typically, when 99% of the time when we talk about blockchain, it's always there's a dollar value assigned to it somehow, right? So we're not necessarily talking about TPX where you're fractionalizing a part of your house or things like that. So to learn blockchain technology and how it functions, I'm going to say, so I'm certified over at the C4 Consortium in Colorado. I'm certified in Bitcoin and Ethereum. I did not get the auditing certification because that's the PhD. I haven't gotten that far yet, and I didn't feel like I needed to. But that was after, obviously, I'm old now, and I went to college. There was no blockchain when I was in college, shy of what we think the New York Times invented back in 91, 92, which could probably lead to another story. But technically, blockchain, in my experience, in the chains that I use, which are the mainstream, I feel like I want to say Ethereum, right? And Polygon, Phantom, Tron, all of these EVM-based 0x addresses that you see, 99% of that is in a programming language called Solidity, which you also want to learn JavaScript. And if you can learn JavaScript, not JavaScript, I'm sorry, but Java, Solidity is almost the same thing, like Chevy to GMC. It's exactly the same minus a few characters. So you want to get involved in that programming language, in that coding, and then also you're gonna have to understand a little bit of networking, right? You would take computer networking, generic computer networking. You have to understand APIs. React, as far instead of HTML, HTML is going away in the future. Believe it or not, when we talk about Web 3, when you hear everybody saying Web 3, no more HTML. It's going to be it's something called React. And it is, for someone my age, I ain't learning it anytime soon. I've tried. So you got React, you got Java, you got Solidity, which is the actual programming language for Ethereum and its counterparts. And then the other aspect of what makes everything so secure, actually an easy answer, is most universities offer cryptography as a focus. I don't know if it's a minor or a major, but cryptography with math and hashing. And I mean, from there you should be good to go. You know that, and so many online. What do you got? Coursera. You've got you don't necessarily have to even. That's a political. Is that a thing? Are we allowed to say that? The 4-year degree is not what it used to be. You could literally you could use Coursera, and all the, Amazon Web Services has their own Ethereum certification with their classes.
Also doing like a coding dojo. Like, I mean, if it's coding and, a lot of places offer coding classes for free. So
and that's a good example to summarize my side of it. Before I got into financial technology, I was a tech who didn't necessarily know anything about finance. Right? My story is that I was first taught by the one guy that should not be teaching it. And then the next guy fixed me all up to properly teach me. I was a tech. I didn't know anything about finance. I didn't care what a VWAP was in a stock trade. Nonetheless, sweeping dark market orders, with an iceberg strategy. All of this sounds Greek, but to me, it's normal conversation now. I learned none of that in college.
That's why we do this, because for a lot of people, it is brand new verbiage and technology. And same thing for me. I've learned so much from you guys by doing these podcasts. Jonny, why don't you tell us what he could be taking to prepare himself for the financial side of it?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have to confess, my dear buddy James has totally confused me talking about Pythons and Solidities and HTML and all that bamboozling gobbledygook, I reckon you won't need to worry about that. You'll just get hold of Chat GPT, or Google is meant to have an even better one, i.e. artificial intelligence. And there's a pretty good chance that artificial intelligence is going to start doing all the programming that you need. And just bear in mind one thing. What is blockchain? All blockchain is an Excel spreadsheet on steroids. It's just a database of information which is held really secure. But, you know, I'm assuming that Jonny is in your neck of the woods in Seattle. So I've posted in our chat here, Badger, and I'm sure you can get, you know, this to Jonny. This is the blockchain Web3 in Bellevue, in the Seattle area. And in my experience, the best way to get involved with blockchain is a bit like, what's the best way to have a baby? You got to get pregnant. You got to jump in feet first, and you got to ask all the stupid questions, and you just got to soak up the knowledge. And okay, James and I have been involved in this space since, well, I've been involved since 2016, so that makes it coming up for 7 years. And I'm learning stuff every day, and it's just constantly changing. So I'm not convinced that a course, a book, a one place is going to equip you with the level of information knowledge you need. But from a financial point of view, you need to really do a bit of reading and just understand, you know, things, you know, very basic things like the power of dollar cost averaging, i.e. putting a bit of money away every month into something which is hugely volatile, like cryptocurrencies. You know, diversifying investments. So you make sure you have some real estate, make sure you have some bonds, make sure you have some equities. And a lot of this is very basic stuff. But when it comes to digital assets, it's no different, because what we're seeing is over time, you're going to see every asset that you can think of, whether it's real estate, commodities, derivatives, you know, stocks, bonds, but even data. And you look at the companies that have made the most amount of money over the last, say, 10, 15 years. And that's the FANGs, which are the Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, Amazon. These companies have made money, not necessarily by what they're selling, but they've made money out of your data, because they understand what you're doing and where you are and what your habits are. Then they sell advertising space or particular products then to you based off what you're doing. And that data, I think over the next 5-10 years, you, the consumer, is going to be in control of that data. And that's really, really important. Now, that's nothing to do with blockchain, but what you'll be able to do is create digital assets out of people's data. And that could prove to be really, really important. And just to finish off on that, look at one of the biggest sectors in the world, and that's healthcare. The US spends 20% of its GDP, gross domestic product, i.e. all the economic activity that go on in America, 20% is to do with healthcare. So can you monetize people's healthcare? Because if you can, you could make an absolute fortune. And if you're going to monetize it, it's got to be really secure. So the information's got to be held using some sort of cryptographic technology, which is what James was talking about. Does that help, Badger?
Thank you so much. I think that's a wealth of information, and would really be involved. Like, know what you're doing. Be educated. Watch our animated podcasts and learn some things. I think that knowledge is power, and that has never changed since the beginning of time, right?
Absolutely.
That the better, know what you're talking about, get involved, join a chat room about it, and be cautious when, like you said, it's a volatile market. But if you diversify the way you're investing, and are educated about what you're doing, then like we've always said, put $1 in and then watch that dollar grow.
Badger, can I come back in there? Because as you know, every week we write this newsletter called Digital Bites, which people can find on cyber.fm, or you can go to teamblockchain.net and you can get it sent to you every week. But we wrote an article this week about arguably, certainly America's probably best investor, a chap called Warren Buffett, who many of your listeners will be very, very familiar with. And it's quite interesting because he's really anti-cryptocurrencies. Having said, Bitcoin is probably rat poison squared, he called it. Yet he actually owns 2% of Brazil's biggest bank, called NU, NU. And NU is about to launch a crypto called the NU coin. And they've got something like 37 million people. And NU, this very, very successful Brazilian bank, they reckon that it's quicker and faster and cheaper and more secure to move money around using NU coin. But going back to Warren Buffett, he is a big shareholder and owns over 20% in another iconic brand in America called American Express. I'm sure, Badger, you've got a platinum American Express and you get ushered into the VIP access whenever you come out of your borough. But
no.
But he hasn't
that's okay.
But he hasn't bought any shares in American Express since 1999. And in 1999, he owned around about 10% of American Express. So I ask you, how has he managed to double his holding in American Express without buying any more? Well, what's happened, and again, you just listen to some of the financial press and you'll hear that, big companies, they've gone out and borrowed money because they can buy it cheap off the bank, and they've bought back their shares. So they've gone into the market and bought shares in American Express and then cancelled them. And if you didn't sell your shares back to American Express, but maybe your neighbor did, what's happened is that your shareholding has gone up a little bit and gone up a little bit. So that's a really good example of holding on to something for the long term. And Warren Buffett, who was a 10% shareholder, say 20 years ago, now owns 20% of American Express simply because American Express have been buying shares back on an ongoing basis. So that's a little lesson in finance of how buybacks can impact on your portfolio.
Diamond hands, they call it.
Diamond hands, absolutely.
You do not let go. That's actually interesting. You taught me. I never thought about that, right? So any stock that you buy that does routine buybacks, burning the supply is what we call it today, right?
Absolutely. But the other one, James, that we were looking at this week, we were looking at Starbucks. We've all heard didn't they start in Seattle, Badger?
Yes, Starbucks is from Seattle.
Okay, so Starbucks,
yep.
They have 30 million members in their loyalty program. And incredibly, these members, they account for 56% of the turnover of Starbucks. And there's a little adage that if you're running a business, stop being a hunter. Stop running around looking for new clients. Be a farmer. Look after your existing clients. Treat them with care. Respect them. Because those clients, they've already bought once. There's a much higher propensity that they'll buy from you again.
Get their name right on the coffee.
Absolutely. So what Starbucks have done is to bring a good old-fashioned loyalty card where they had a bit of paper and they stamped it. They've brought it kicking and screaming into the 21st century by launching Odyssey. And Odyssey is their digital Web3 loyalty scheme. So if you want to learn about blockchain, if you want to learn about digital assets, just look at some of the companies. Starbucks is a good example. Nike is another one. Adidas is another one. Burberry, the fashion company. All these companies. Look at the NBA. Look, the NBA, we're recording this on the 8th of February, so probably less than 12 hours ago. What's the basketball player, James? Not O'Byrne. Who just scored more points than ever?
I'm a football guy.
Oh, for goodness sake. Come on.
Seriously?
He's got the world record, over 38,000 points. Well, the National Basketball Association, they've been creating these things called non-fungible tokens. Now, when you and I were at school, James, we had cards that we'd swap in the playground.
Baseball cards.
LeBron James broke the record. Look at that. Listen, that's an hour ago. Wait, I want to take a moment here. You're not allowed to try to trick me at 8 o'clock in the morning on news that broke an hour ago.
The badge is up getting the worms. I thought you'd be there in your wheelchair rolling around. You'd pick up on this, no problem.
So because you live in the future compared to us, right? You live in the future. You know what happens first. LeBron James breaks the NBA scoring
LeBron
record.
James, that's the man.
Wow.
It was an hour ago. God.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry for not being up on the up and up.
That's so cool. Like, but I
That's
deal
why I
with
love this
people in the
podcast.
future all the time. I deal with people in the future all the time. Literally everybody that I do podcasts with is several hours, if not a whole day ahead of me. So,
That's why Johnny's rich. He knows what the price of Bitcoin is before everybody else. He lives
absolutely.
in the
I'm selling
future.
and you're buying.
Yeah, you're dumping on us. Oh, we broke your whole thing. Keep going.
But Badger, just going back to blockchain, really interesting. There's a company called Blockworks, and if you go onto Blockworks, it shows you the number of developers, and they reckon that at the moment the number of active developers has come off a bit of a high. It was nudging 27,000, but it's around about 25,000 individuals are developers. Building programs at the moment. As I say, you've got around 5,000 developers on Ethereum, and that's why you're seeing more people or more apps coming out on the Ethereum blockchain. I suspect, I've got no evidence of this yet because I'm in the future, but not in the future quite enough. But I suspect that in certainly a couple of years' time, Ethereum's dominance will actually wax and wane. It will actually probably be much, much less than it is now, because as we start seeing, there's a really cool blockchain called Minima. Now, Minima, we were talking to James and I the other day, and Hugo Fieler, who's the CEO of Minima, and that blockchain has more nodes than any other blockchain in the world, about 180,000 nodes it's got, because it runs on people's laptops, on their phones, in their cars. And it's the basis of the Internet of Things for cars to be able to talk to each other, to say, be careful, coming around that corner is a cyclist, or there's a pothole in the road, or whatever it may well be telling you. So you're seeing new blockchains coming along. Minima have just done a deal with WeTransfer. So they're working with another big brand, 80 million customers WeTransfer have got. So you're going to see new blockchains like Minima coming through and stealing some of the thunder of Ethereum. So if you want to be a developer, sure, Ethereum's important, but I think you're going to find there'll be other blockchains coming through which are challenging because they may be faster or cheaper, or they're doing things that perhaps Ethereum wasn't designed to do, but they've been created to be, if you like, an Ethereum killer.
Oh, that's amazing.
But Badger, we've got some. I think this is quite worrying news, which I want to share. And I know James knows that I like my legal eagle friends that come on to the Digital Bike Show with Cyber FM every week. But in this country, as you know, we in the UK, look, we're not good at a lot of things. We're good at inventing them, like cricket and football and rugby, and then we end up losing them. So we're not good necessarily at the execution. But one thing we are very, very good at is the law, and it's highly respected throughout the world. And many international cases are often tried here in the UK. And I would, being serious, I really strongly would recommend that if you have anything to do with cryptocurrencies, if you have anything to do with software development, so you might be online gaming, you might be online gambling, you may be looking to build a career in artificial intelligence, you need to look at this case called tulip trading, because potentially this is going to have a massive impact if you're a software developer.
So, let's expand on that. That was in the Digital Bytes, and let's talk a little about that. So, James Ramsden, the King's Counsel,
he's like a very clever attorney. So King's Counsel is like a top attorney, and he was representing one party. James, who's he representing? You know the characters better than me.
So he's representing Jack Dorsey, correct?
Yep.
I'm not quite sure I understood the Craig Wright involvement. I don't. Are they
Well,
on the same team or on the opposite team?
Craig Wright has gone and said, look, I've had in today's terms, today's money, $3 billion worth of Bitcoin hacked, stolen. And he's managed to track down a bunch of Bitcoin developers and say, look, you guys, you wrote the code. It's got hacked because your code wasn't great. So therefore, I'm holding you liable. I want $3 billion, please, or I want my Bitcoin back. And from what I understand, Jack Dorsey's jumped in to say to the developers, whoa, hang on. These developers, they're not rich guys and girls. And actually, just because you're a developer, why should you be responsible for the way your code is being used in not totally dissimilar environment? If I'm driving a Ford Mustang and I, go into a bus queue of people and kill people, then whose fault is that? Is it my fault or is it Ford because they've made a vehicle that killed people? And that's what we have going on at the moment, where someone, allegedly Mr. Wright, wants his money back because he's saying the people that develop the code are responsible for it. And this went to court, and the judge said, no, case thrown out. The defendants, either software developers, they're not liable. It then went back to a court of appeal. The judge at that stage said, you know what? Maybe the softwares have a case to answer for. This court case now needs to go to a retrial. So all the evidence needs to be looked at again. And basically, what it really means is that if you're in the UK and this court case goes against the developers, then any software that you've written, potentially you, the code developers, could be liable for acts, errors, admissions, and any other liability, infinitum. So why would you be based in England if that's the case? But if it goes the other way and the judge says, no, you've written the code and there was enough sort of, health warnings around it, and you're responsible for your own actions and the way you've used the code, in the same way you're responsible when you drive a car or use a gun, it's the user of the item, not the developer of the item. If it goes that way, then software developers really should relocate back to England because they're protected by the law in a way that they're not protected at the moment. Because you can have this in the US, you could have it in any of the Asian countries or anywhere else in the world. Someone could bring a court case against the developer and say, look, you're sitting there in Nigeria and you've written some great code, but someone's found a bug. Right, we're now taking you to court and you've got no protection at the moment. So it's a really important court case, which we wrote all about it in this week's Digital Bites.
And that's crazy when you think about that. I mean, let's break this down. So people write software code all the time for different things. So what about somebody who's written software code for a dating app and someone uses that dating app to hurt someone else? If this is written down, I mean, to the letter of the law and I get it, that could potentially mean the software designer could be held potentially liable for someone stalking and murdering another human being.
Absolutely. And we talked about artificial intelligence earlier on, Badger. So you've got a huge battle lining up between Microsoft and Google. Microsoft have been invested 10 billion into OpenAI, that have got ChatGPT, which has taken the world by storm. 500 million people have used that bit of software since it came out in November. And Google is saying, wait, hang on, we've got ours. You need to use ours. But what happens if we find that there's a bit of bad software in there and someone asks and then acts on the artificial intelligence that's created? Then people are going to be suing Google or Google or Microsoft because of their artificial intelligence answers potentially.
Yeah. What if the artificial intelligence hurts somebody's feelings and then they go do something silly?
It's artificially stupid, not artificially intelligent.
Yeah. Because it happens all the time.
It does.
What if the AI becomes a bully?
Yeah. What about if the AI becomes corrupt and when you say, what car do I buy? You suddenly find it's been sponsored by Nissan or Honda or, Volvo, and saying, well, you need to go and buy this car. Why? Because I'm telling you, that's the best car in the world.
Can you imagine a car loan? The best interest rates are at
Yeah. Best way to insure your house, your car is X. It's got to be really, really careful. You can see it's how open to fraud, or well, not so much fraud, but manipulation. At the end of the day, what have you got? I think you've got 50,000 people in Washington that are lobbying your government. 50,000 political interests trying to change politicians' views and minds to vote through laws and regulations. We've already got it in society, but do we really want it when it's in a digitized form? I think that's a question as a society need to actually A, be aware of, and then B, answer, is that what we want?
Well, and I think knowing it's even going on, period, is so important. Like having these conversations, getting it out there, because I think there's so many people who walk through their day and they're absolutely oblivious to any of this even going on out in the world, right?
As you said, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
So go back to Johnny's question about how does he get involved in blockchain? How does he get involved in digital assets? Open your eyes, go and inquire, be inquisitive. And when someone gives you an answer, say, okay, how, why, what's behind it? What does it mean? Where's the proof? Be careful of fake news. Be careful of anything you read in the news or see on the news, because very often it's got a slant, it's got a bias. And there are very, very few experts. And when it comes to certainly blockchain and digital assets, there are very, very, very few experts. We're all learning. We're all learning every day, and we're challenging each other to say, well, why have you said that? How does that make sense? What are the implications of that? AI is a great example. At one level, it sounds great, but another level, okay, it can do your homework, but supposing it gives me the wrong answer and I take that as an answer for something much more important, like some sort of medical emergency. So just, a caution, be cautious, but be optimistic in terms of looking for other sources to verify what you're learning.
Well, and don't let it do. I think the fear, and I mean, this is probably an old lady fear, but I really have concerns about AI doing things for my grandchildren that they need to do for themselves. Like, growing up as youngsters, we all had the Encyclopedia Britannica in our homes. That's where we got all of our information about whatever. But that was actually vetted, actual factual information about a certain subject, if it was in the encyclopedia, right?
Do we know that for sure in hindsight?
Well,
that's an interesting question, isn't it? We trusted that book enough to pay $500 a book for it, right? Your parents had to take out a mortgage to get you the college said you have to have an encyclopedia set. Where did that info come from?
Well, James, what I think is a good example there is look at Microsoft. They had Enthata, didn't they? Which was meant to be an online encyclopedia. They spent millions and millions on it. But what replaced it? What overtook it? Wikipedia. And, a lot of people berate Wikipedia and say, yeah, but is it verified? And any old people can put information. But by crowdsourcing facts and figures and information, Wikipedia is used by many people, millions of people every day. So I'm afraid I'm going to go with James. I think you're better off using the internet and replace Encyclopedia Britannica, but also look what's coming down the track. It's Web3. Web3 is coming down the track, and it'll make it more immersive, more memorable, and that's going to make it really very much more interesting and richer experience for people. And we struggle. We're all three of us are too old, but the kids coming down, it's going to be much more native and much more natural for them to be walking around with a pair of glasses, and top right hand side is all the information they need about that car, that house, that historical figure, because they'll be wearing or having some sort of implant where that information will just be on tap, and you won't necessarily have to remember things, but you're wanting to be able to access things.
I agree. Like, I think the availability to be able to jump on my computer and say, oh, okay, well, I'm looking at this car I'm looking at all of these loans that are available to me. Who has the best interest? Who has the best rate? I'm going to go with this one, be able to pre-do my loan before I ever even walk on the car lot.
Yep.
And just walk in there and go, that's the car I want. I've already been pre-approved for the availability to have so much knowledge in one place, I think is fabulous. And I totally agree with that. Do I miss the old school days? Yeah. I mean, I do, because I'm old. But I also embrace this new digital frontier and I'm super excited about it. It's one reason why we do these digital podcasts. So we get this information out there. And
so Jonny touched on something real quick. I don't want to lose sight of it. So Jonny had said, the future is Web3. And a lot of people will say, have a different opinion about what Web3 is. Web3 is self-sovereign identity. Web3 is personalizing your own data. And Web3 is monetizing your own identity. I think the best easy example based on this subject would be something to the effect of, you want to subscribe to the New York Times because you want to read their articles, right? Today we have a paywall. If I subscribe, I get 3 free months, and then I got to start paying $3 a month or whatever. No different than when we were kids, right? When we were kids, in fact, in New York growing up, they made us subscribe to the New York Times. And of course, if your family didn't have, expendable money, there was a little funding, so that the poor kids could also get the New York Times. But we had to get the New York Times because if you're a real New Yorker, there's even a way to fold the paper correctly. Otherwise, you're an outcast. But we had to read the current events and what was going on, and we'd have to write an essay about it. So now imagine today, 2023, an online class saying, okay, kids, we're going to subscribe to the New York Times, and we're going to go over this article. Now they have a paywall. So in the future with Web3, which goes all the way back to your question with, I forgot his name already, but was it Jonny?
Jonny. Yeah, his name is Jonny.
It's about what he should study, and I mentioned React, right? So with React, you're going to find that the future New York Times website will be gated off, and you're going to log in with an NFT that the New York Times has created as a membership pass. And hopefully in the future it'll become easier. But at the end of the day, what our kids are going to be accustomed to doing is just connecting their wallet to the New York Times. It'll validate that they hold a New York Times subscription and display the articles. The New York Times made a little money. You have fun holding an NFT. And when I'm tired of the New York Times, when my political views may have changed, I could sell that NFT to Jonny and say, I'm done with this one. Here you go. I think that's where the future is going in terms of when he mentioned Web3 and we were talking about news, current events, and decisions and subscription models, and the old is new again.
Yeah. And Badger, I think James has raised a really interesting point there. And that is, at the moment, many of your listeners, those that have heard of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, they probably think of, pictures of monkeys or apes, Bored Ape Yacht Club, or this chap Beebles who did one digital picture and made $69 million. It's all about speculation and making a quick buck. But more and more and more non-fungible tokens are going to be like digital certificates of information, and they'll have a utility value. They won't be there for gambling. They'll be there to actually, because they have some real tangible value. They give you access to a concert or a venue, or as James says, maybe it's a publication, or maybe it's your qualifications or your healthcare data or your information about your car or your home or whatever. So we're going to be getting used to these digital certificates of information, and they're going to have to be stored somewhere. And that where are they going to be stored? Who's going to have access to them? And it's interesting to see Apple have brought out advanced data protection, and what the way they secure it is that they give you, the owner, they give and say, you come up with the key, the cryptographic key. If you lose it, well, you're stuffed. You've lost all your information. It means people can't be coerced and strong-armed by the feds or by Interpol or anyone else to say, can you give me Johnny's information? No, the only person that can get Johnny's information is Jonny. So therefore, Jonny has to make sure he's given his key to his lover, his brother, his mother, or whoever it is, because if he forgets it, he's got to go to somewhere to get it back. So it's not all one-sided. You know, that's quite a responsibility. Where do I give all access to all my information? Who do I give it to? But I'll have control and power over it, not, in this case, Apple.
Correct. Like there's millions of dollars out there. Well, billions of dollars out there in the ether that is just out there, and no one can get their hands on it because they've forgotten their seed words. Absolutely. Right?
Maybe we should come back. We'll do another little next time. We'll look at this a little bit more detail, perhaps. But we really want your listeners on East Loves West. Tell us what you want to talk about, and James and I and the Badger will do our best to go away and squirrel away and see if we can find out some examples to help you.
Absolutely. And we're getting more and more people that are talking about the animated podcast. And if you're listening and if you're watching right now, there's 2 places to watch it now, guys. We got picked up by Spotify. So we upload these animated videos to Spotify and they can watch it as a podcast. And we have our own we have our own YouTube channel, and we have our own Google podcast also. So there's lots of places for you to do that. But at the YouTube channel, if you can comment directly below the video and let us know what you want to know. Help us break myths. If you're hearing things out there that people are talking about digital currency and blockchain technology or NFTs. I hear a lot of stuff about NFTs where I'm like, I don't know if that's right or not. And then I'm the one who reaches out to you guys to get that education on there. But definitely, absolutely. And if you want to get educated, you can go read these amazing articles that James and Jonny do. And James, tell them where they go to be able to read these articles and sign up for it.
I like to say teamblockchain.net.
Perfect.
There you go, teamblockchain.net, and we'll send you every week. It's about 4 or 5 articles every week. No advertising, no recommendations, just pure information and education. Looking at different case studies of who, how, where, and why blockchain technology and digital assets are being used in all the different countries of the world. And then we have the show from cyber.fm, which goes to 170 countries. And what do you got? About 4.6 million listeners on cyber.fm, James?
We do well. We're doing about 4.6 million per month. And we're trying our best for 2023 our goal is to double that.
Wow.
Wow, and I thought I was doing great because I had over 4 million for the year.
Well, you are, though. I mean, you're part of us. We are one.
I know.
Right. Yeah. Badger, I've got to go. You've the sun's up, the worms are all gone back underground, and you've got to scurry off to your other sort of occupation.
Yes, I do. I have to put on my super suit and go to my secret identity job. Thank you so much for joining me today. And we will be back again soon in a few weeks with another of these amazing blockchain and cryptocurrency video podcasts. Thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.